Welcome to this explainer. But hey, I want you to completely reset your expectations before we even begin. Forget the dry, dusty history lessons. I want you to picture this as a cinematic thriller, a hyper-realistic fight for existence, where the villain, well, it isn't a monster or an invading army. It's the brutal, lung-burning, merciless cold of the Ice Age. Today, we're exploring the absolute extremes of human endurance, and the honestly mind-blowing ways our ancestors refused to die when the very air they breathed was literally trying to freeze them out of existence.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're actually going to start our journey not in the distant past, but in the year 1983. A hunter named Richard Daley was riding his horse through the mountains of Idaho. Without any warning, a sudden, incredibly violent blizzard swept through the peaks. In just a matter of minutes, Daley and his neighbor were completely trapped in a blinding whiteout, totally isolated, no hope of rescue, and the temperature plummeted so fast and so violently that Daley's horse actually dropped dead right out from under him, killed by the sheer shock of the cold. Daley was next. He was mere moments away from freezing to death.
Facing certain death, Daley did something that sounds like it's straight out of a survival horror movie. He cut open the belly of his dead horse, pulled out the vital organs, and literally buried his own body inside the animal's carcass. Why? To absorb the absolute last remnants of body heat radiating from the animal's flesh. And he stayed inside that visceral, bloody shelter for hours until a rescue team finally found him. Now, the reason we're starting with this intense story is because what Daley tapped into wasn't some modern invention. That exact, raw, desperate instinct to use any means necessary to preserve heat, that is exactly what kept our ancestors alive tens of thousands of years ago.
Section 1. Mastering Fire and Calories.
When the world outside is a frozen wasteland, survival completely hinges on one core directive. You have to generate and preserve heat at all absolute costs. We kind of tend to picture someone just striking a flint and sitting back, right? But the reality was a grueling discipline. Ancient fire wasn't a simple spark, it was a relentlessly guarded 24/7 lifeline. The responsibility was distributed across the entire tribe. If it was your shift, you stayed awake, staring at those flames, listening to the howling blizzard outside. If that fire died, you froze, or the predators circling in the pitch black moved in. In a very real sense, the very first warm house in human history wasn't made of walls or a roof. It was just a carefully guarded fire.
And this brilliantly illustrates how deeply strategic our ancestors actually had to be. Think about the archaeological findings from Kesem Cave. Around 420,000 years ago, early humans weren't just eating what they killed immediately, they were planning ahead. They took bone marrow, wrapped it in animal skins, and stored it. They even took cuts of meat, weighed them down with stones, and plunged their bare hands into freezing pools of water to sink them. They basically built natural submerged refrigerators. The survival benefit here is massive. When a deadly storm hit, the tribe didn't have to risk going out to hunt. They already had a fresh, hidden stockpile ready to sustain them through the worst of the weather.
But what were they eating? See, when it's freezing out, your internal human furnace goes into overdrive. Your body demands massive amounts of calories just to maintain a baseline temperature. Because of this physiological reality, hunting for lean meat was actually dangerous. Eating only lean protein without enough fat in these extreme conditions can cause your body to weaken and fail. That is exactly why they targeted massive, thick-skinned beasts. Dense, oily mammoth fat was the ultimate lifesaver. It was concentrated thermal fuel to keep the human engine running for days under the most extreme conditions imaginable.
Section 2. Architecture of mammoth bones.
So internal heat from fat and fire was absolutely crucial, but it just wasn't enough when you were facing minus 40-degree winds. They needed physical barriers. And I want you to think about the number 429 for a second. Recent advanced dating techniques applied to an archaeological site in Meseritz, Ukraine, revealed that a single structure, built during the absolute harshest phase of the Ice Age, was continuously occupied off and on for up to 429 years. Generations of families grew up, lived and died inside the exact same shelter.
And that shelter was a masterpiece of survival engineering. It was a literal fortress made from hundreds of interlocking mammoth bones and massive curving tusks. I mean, picture this highly cinematic visual. A structure sitting out in the white wasteland, looking from the outside like the gray rib-cage skeleton of some giant mythological monster. But inside it was draped and lashed tightly with heavy, smelling animal skins. It created this claustrophobic, sure, but totally impenetrable sanctuary where a family could huddle around a glowing hearth while the apocalypse raged outside.
Let's move to and see how this builds across an epic timeline of human endurance. 420,000 years ago, we have that marrow storage at Kesem Cave. By 300,000 years ago, we see the targeted use of bear skins. Fast forward to 40,000 years ago in Siberia, and we see a massive technological leap, the eyed needle. And by 24,000 years ago, tiny ivory figurines from Russia actually show people wearing perfectly tailored, airtight fur coats. Our ancestors were literally stitching their way into the harshest environments on Earth.
Section 3. Needles versus Neanderthal biology.
What's fascinating here is that different human species were battling the exact same freezing temperatures, but they approached it completely differently. We really see a grand divergence. On one side, Homo sapiens utilized cultural adaptation. That Siberian-eyed needle let them stitch tight garments that sealed body heat in, an innovation that eventually allowed them to push all the way into the Arctic and conquer the Americas. On the other side, Neanderthals relied on biology. Nature practically turned their bodies into walking furnaces. They were stocky, barrel-chested, and had massive, wide nasal cavities designed specifically to physically warm and humidify sub-zero air before it could shock their lungs. Section 4. Nomads and communal warmth.
We really need to completely shatter the cartoon myth of the stationary caveman just sitting in one dark hole. The evidence shows our ancestors were highly strategic tacticians of the frozen landscape. They did not wander aimlessly. They executed highly planned seasonal migrations between cave systems, tracking the animal herds perfectly. And their hunting was incredibly selective. A study focusing on human evolution found that 300,000 years ago, early humans were specifically targeting bears. And not just for meat, but because they knew bear pelts provided the heaviest, most superior insulation against the cold compared to literally any other animal. They were tactical survivors.
Inside those caves, survival was a collective act. In Sibadu Cave in South Africa, dating back 77,000 years, archaeologists found remnants of carefully constructed beds made from specific plant leaves that naturally repelled insects. But even more important than the beds was how they slept on them. Picture this sensory reality for a second. An entire tribe sleeping pressed tightly together, body against body, maximizing every single degree of shared warmth. In the deep winter dark, the tribe survived as a single, unified, breathing organism.
Section 5. The hibernation hypothesis.
Now prepare yourselves because this is where the science gets deeply strange and pushes into the most extreme biological theory of this entire explainer. Did early humans hibernate like bears? Just let the sheer wildness of that concept sink in for a moment.
400,000. That is the age, in years, of a massive collection of human bones discovered deep in the suffocating darkness of a cave system in Atapuerca, Spain. And it's written in these ancient fossilized bones where scientists found the terrifying and fascinating clues that sparked this incredible theory.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the physical evidence they mapped out. We're talking specific lesions, signs of kidney damage, and evidence of paused seasonal growth cycles, meaning their bones literally stopped growing during the winter, just like tree rings. These markers perfectly mirror the bone damage seen in animals that undergo deep winter hibernation. So this ignited a fierce scientific debate. Did early humans trapped with zero food literally retreat into dark caves, drop their heart rates, and sleep away the harshest months exactly like bears? Or is this just the grim biological footprint of severe, horrific starvation? If that hibernation theory actually holds true, it means we once possessed a biological superpower that we simply lost as our clothing and fire technology improved.
Which brings us full circle back to Richard Daley in the Idaho mountains. When he buried himself in that horse, he wasn't inventing a new technique. His brain was reaching back tens of thousands of years. Surviving the Ice Age wasn't just about having the right bone hut or the warmest bearskin. It was about an unbroken, desperate, ferocious will to live. It was about the collective patience to sit shoulder to shoulder in the pitch black and just refuse to surrender to the ice.
And here is the most powerful takeaway from all of this. The humans who engineered those bone fortresses, who guarded those fires with their lives, who stitched garments to conquer the glaciers, they didn't just survive. They won. And they passed that victory down. The exact same blood that survived minus 40-degree Ice Age winters is pumping through your veins right now as you watch this explainer. So I leave you with this. If that level of absolute, unbreakable resilience is written into your DNA, what extreme survival instincts are lying dormant inside of you right now, just waiting for the storm?